Hello, cats and kittens. Odewa Jose Yoroshku. I'm back in the Crisis Corner with what I call the Versus series. In this series, I'm going to take two franchises, two whatever, basically, and pit them against each other to see which is the best. Now, which is my favorite? Okay, this is subjective. Comparisons can be odious, that's true. But again, this is my analysis of two things, two series, two whatever, to see which is the better of the two or which I favor over the other. And for the beginning of the series, I'm doing a versus series. What if versus Star Wars Visions? Star Wars Visions I just recently got into. Now, who do you think won? I'm here today to tell you, in my opinion, Star Wars Visions slaughters What If. Hands down, no diff. It's over. You know what I'm saying? And that's very subjective. It's very much my opinion. And I'm not saying this necessarily to run down What If, because I enjoyed a, quite a few episodes of What If. I'm just saying that Star Wars Visions is completely off the chain, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I recommend What If too. If you're a fan of the MCU, check it out. It's got some really good stuff in there. But Star Wars Visions is on a different level. Now, I took notes, so you don't think I'm pulling this out of the air. I'm going to try to run this down really quick. My basic format for reviewing the two series is a review of production, format, and stories. When I say production, I'm talking about animation, voice acting, and music. Production is basically how the story is told. What's the format of the various stories? Because they have a bit in common, but we'll get to that. And then the stories. What types of stories are told? How well executed? And then the final verdict. I'm not getting too into the stories themselves because I don't want to spoil them, but I'm just giving you the grade that I have on them. And let's get started. All right. So production, we start with What If. What If has one production company is basically that's the main difference between the two stories. One production company is handling the animation, voice acting is a studio, Marvel's animation studio or whatever. I would say that the art is clean, consistent, but it doesn't necessarily work in the favor of every story that they're telling. And the main example of that I would have is Marvel's the Zombies episode, which is episode 5. That episode, I would say, would have benefited with a darker type animation, but for what it does, I mean, it's don't get me wrong. I can see tweaking it a bit to fit the mood of the story. Maybe even episode 4, Doctor Strange losing his hands. Anyway, but that's just one. This is just one evaluation. The music, I say, is solid, but not necessarily memorable, and the voice acting is about the same. They pulled in a lot of the MCU actors to do the voice acting, but it's my contention that, actors, like actual physical actors don't necessarily make the best voice talent for animation, but they don't do a bad job. It's, like I said, the music is standard MCU music, which is usually forgettable. But it doesn't really detract from the story. It just doesn't add to it either. Star Wars Visions, various animation companies in various styles, which I think is good because the stories are not, there's various stories with various styles, and the animation usually suits the style of the story. You could take, for instance, you wouldn't use the same animation that you would on episode 7, The Elder, as you would on episode 2, Tatooine Rhapsody. So that's a smart move. Different production companies, different styles. Different styles of art suit the story. The music ranges from solid to glorious. And I will pull out episode 9, which is Akakiri. I would pull that out as one example. Yeah, I would say that. Also, I would actually say The Ninth Jedi, episode 5. I mean, some of the music stuff they got going on with these, with the series is quite formidable. It's, I ain't saying it's John Williams, but it's pretty close. And the voice acting ranges from above average to outstanding. So make of that what you will. Format. What if? What if is an interesting format because it goes back to my old days of reading comics, and two of my favorite like character, like Spider-Man, Captain America, non-specific character books were, I guess you could say that, Marvel team up, because you usually got Spider-Man teamed up with some other Marvel character, and I love that. And What If, because it takes various storylines or characters and puts an alternate spin on them. So that's the format for What If. But it's based off of the MCU. So all they have to go on is what's been done in the first 3 phases, or however that works. So they can they're restricted to that, which is not a bad thing. It's just where they get the material from. So it's confined to the MCU work. Episodes are roughly about 30 to 35 minutes in length with a metric ton of credits. So they might be 25 minutes total, but they're usually in length about 30 to 35 minutes in length. What else? Okay, so we go over to Star Wars Visions. We see that it's a free form, as far as I know, range of stories from the Disney Star Wars universe, I guess, because I'm not as familiar with the Disney Star Wars universe. I mean, all of the stuff in Rebels and all of that, I'm pretty much caught up on Clone Wars and Bad Batch and all that stuff, but I'm not completely caught up on all of Disney Star Wars. I'm very familiar with the original trilogy, obviously, and some of the extended universe, which apparently has been wiped out. But so I basically know where they're getting some of this material from, and some of some of this may have been stuff that they made up entirely just for the Vision series. So if you notice any connection to previous or any of the new Disney stuff that's actually being carried over into the Star Wars Visions line, let me know. Just fill in the comments or something like that, because I'm not that familiar with all of the Disney Star Wars stuff. Anyway, so let me see, stories. And here I'm talking about what type of stories are told and how well are they executed. Now, the What If stories are based on MCU outcomes. They lean heavily on previewing what's going on in what's to come of the multiverse concept. So everything in Marvel, or at least a lot of stuff that they're doing with the MCU, is pushing towards the coming expansion of the multiverse. So you get a whole lot of that. I mean, What If? I mean, it's basically saying what if. It's relaying different possibilities in the coming Marvel MCU. That's basically where they're mining the stories from. So it leans heavily on the multiverse concept. MCU humor. As with just like the MCU, the humor is a constant, and sometimes I think it's to the story's detriments. And for that, I would say see the zombies episode. Let me see. I would also say episode 3, The World Lost Its Mighty. What if the world lost its mightiest heroes? And maybe even episode 4, Doctor Strange loses his hands. I mean, Marvel likes its humor. It is what it is. But I think sometimes it gets in the way. I mean, I ain't even going to get into episode 7, if Thor were the only child. I mean, I despise that episode above all others, but that's my personal preference. And also, stories are meant to connect at certain points. So, especially with what we've just seen with episode 8 connects back to the end of episode 7. And I didn't notice if there's other carryover because I just not really looking that hard. But so these are supposed to be interconnected, and it kind of leaves you with the Easter egg type mentality that they have with the MCU. I mean, if you like hunting for Easter eggs, so be it. Have fun. So that's what I got on stories for What If. Marvel Visions, freeform stories that don't seem to connect. Of course, like I say, I'm not sure if any of these should connect or not. Maybe I'm just not looking for it, but they don't seem to connect. Some concepts from Disney Star Wars are apparent, like the whole stopping the blast of fire with the Force in mid-shot. That comes off a few times. So that's some carryover from the Disney SW, I guess. And the stories are varying lengths for the stories leads to less padding of runtime and fluff. So they don't have to be 25 minutes or 30 minutes. They can, shortest episode is like 10 minutes. It's one of the best, to be honest with you. But, and the pace of the stories are adapted to the story type, sometimes slow and elegant, sometimes quick and quirky. So those are my estimations of the format, stories, and production values of both. My final verdict is the Star Wars Visions slaughters Marvel's What If by a lot. The stories are less predictable, which is not necessarily a bad thing because What If implies that you have to rely on some original source material, so you can't be completely left field. You can't be completely unpredictable because you're basing things on concrete endings, which is the point. So I can't use that as a knock against Marvel. It's just what it is. Visual and audible aspects of the stories are more engaging with Visions. Characters, if not situations, are more memorable. And the least episode of Visions trumps the better episodes of What Ifs. And I look at it this way. My favorite episode of What If to this point is episode 6. What if Killmonger rescued Tony Stark? My favorite episode of Star Wars Visions, I had to think hard about this, really hard, is narrowly, the Ninth Jedi, which edges out Akakiri by the slimmest of margins. All right. Both Visions has 9 episodes to date. Marvel What If has 8. If I was to take the best episode of What If, which is episode 6, and rate it against my top 5 of Marvel Visions, it wouldn't crack the top 5. It would not crack the top 5. I got Akakiri ahead of that. I got the Elder ahead of that. I got Ninth Jedi ahead of that. I have The Duel ahead of that. And I got Tatooine Rhapsody ahead of that. Conversely, if I take the worst episode, I say my least favorite episode. I say that because it's hard for me to say any of these are bad. But if I take, say, episode 3, The Twins, which visually is stunning, but let's say I take The Twins and rate that against the best episodes of What If, I would say that it would come in 4. It would crack the top 5 of Marvel Visions. So it ain't even close, is what I'm saying. So, but enjoy both. Because again, this is just, to some extent, I got a bone to pick a little bit with Marvel. Not necessarily for What If, but just in general. But so I'm trying not to be biased, but the fact of the matter is, I just gotta say, this is my opinion. But enjoy both, by all means. But really get into it. I mean, I cannot stress enough. Check out not Marvel, I'm sorry. Star Wars Visions. It's so good. It's like, and I'm a fan of anime already. So that's, again, that's some of the bias, but just in terms of the storytelling, for instance, like I said, Akakiri is gold. The Duel, The Village Bride. Just check it out. You check it out and let me know. Just let me know after checking out all episodes, which is 17 total, I think. Yeah. And let me know what you think. Don't worry, I'll wait. So let me know what you think. And above all else, enjoy. Because end of the day, this is all good stuff. There's not a whole lot bad in any of this, but I mean, except for that Thor thing, which I think was bad, actually. But that's, again, my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, stay loose.